Hi, Hunter Hastings here. How to think is an important precedent to how to act. How should we think about AI? That's in everyone's minds these days. Well, in what context? Today we're talking to Bryan Phelps. He's the CEO of Big Leap, a marketing agency that's been helping brands from Fortune 500 companies down to startups and everything in between to build brand trust and build brand results in the marketplace. AI comes along, which is changing the world of creativity and marketing and advertising. How to think about it? Well, Bryan came up with an answer, which is build some policies. Let's listen to him. Here's an interesting.
This is the Value Creators Podcast, your source for a new kind of business education, escaping from business administration mode and entering dynamic entrepreneurship mode. We're guided by entrepreneurial economics, which is the source of all growth and positive change for businesses of all sizes in all markets. We talk to experienced experts in value creation so that there's business learning for you in every episode.
Bryan, welcome to the Value Creators Podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Hunter. Appreciate it. Excited to chat with you today.
Well, we're the ones who are excited. You are on the cutting edge of the topic that's on everybody's mind in business these days, which is how to apply AI for productive business purposes. And every business is thinking about that. Everybody I talk to is wrestling with it. It's kind of deer in the headlights stance because everyone's kind of unnerved at the speed at which things are changing, and we're going to change our assumptions and change our practices. You're CEO of Big Leap, a marketing and advertising agency. So that's in the center of the cutting edge.
Yeah.
Everybody's wondering about AI and marketing. You've taken a very proactive stance, which is, hey, before we wrestle with the technology, let's start with a policy.
Yeah.
And it's on your website. I printed it out in a very old-fashioned kind of a way, but we have 9 core principles. I'm not sure we want to walk through each one by one, but take us through the essence of it and what you're trying to achieve and what your message is in these 9 core principles, Bryan.
Yeah. They can be summarized pretty simply. And I have to give credit to our creative director, who was the one that really initiated this as part of our leadership team. And this goes back, it's probably been close to 2 years, I'd say, that maybe we've had that. So it's something that we like you said, we jumped on pretty early, knowing that what we've already seen is pretty wild, and the speed at which it's changing is even crazier. So if you take our policy and maybe simplify it into 3 things, it's first kind of our belief that AI is assistive and not autonomous, generally speaking. I'm sure we'll dive into that some more. The second is responsible use. So with AI, you've heard all the crazy stories from people replicating, video and audio to extort people to all kinds of things. There's a huge spectrum there. And so we believe in using it responsibly, which I'm sure, again, we'll talk some more about. And the third is just the continuing education, learning, and adapting. We don't believe we probably nailed that. Like that's never going to change. We've updated and revised that policy as the world changes. And so we know we need to be flexible with it. But we ultimately, it kind of comes back to kind of our values, our core values as a business too, and how we want to utilize AI. And that policy's helped be a guideline that we can communicate to our clients as well as our team members. It just kind of gives them those guardrails that they can use and function within.
Yeah, and I think that's really helpful in a world of turmoil, and it gives you some credibility as, hey, we know how to apply this for the benefit of our clients. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Let's start with the first of those 3 themes, the assistive, not autonomous theme that you call it prioritizing human creativity and strategy. So tell us more about that and how it might affect practice in marketing.
Yeah, there's so many great uses of AI, and I'm not anti AI by any means, but I also feel like you kind of create the world you want to live in a sense. And so we believe that AI is just going to enable us to do more and be the best, versions of ourselves in a way. I've experienced that as a marketer. I'm not necessarily a great designer, but I've been able to use AI to bring a vision to life, a vision, the creativity that I've had where that's helped. When I've tried to maybe create that, solely using AI or just asked it more broadly, you always get that same output. And so we really believe that creativity and that some of the strategy that comes into play is what makes AI successful in a sense. And so when we have that as a starting point, we feel like we were able to use AI, gives us a superpower to ultimately get where we want to go, either faster and maybe better. In some cases, it can help us do more, or find something, a little tweak here or there that is something maybe we wouldn't have seen on our own. But for us, it kind of comes back to that core of being human led and assisted by AI.
Yeah. We've been using it in our online education courses, and we had a very expensive way of doing those, which was using a camera and a film crew and editing
Yeah.
and all of those kinds of things. Now we use avatars,
Mhm.
where we can have our professors, with their approval, obviously, read, in full quotes, a different script, and so we can keep it updated. So that seems like it's very assistive, but we could see that maybe somebody else could feed it a bad script and it's going to deliver
Yeah.
bad lessons. So I guess that gets to your second point about responsible design. How do you
Yeah.
think about responsibility in that
Yeah,
context?
I mean, like that's a great example of how it can be used. I've had a company that helped me create an avatar, so I've experienced that a little, and it's a great use. And there's some good ways of doing that responsibly with permissions and things like that in place. And so great example. But again, I kind of mentioned this before, and this has gone back a ways of people taking a public figure who's has a lot of podcast recordings. They can get your voice down right, and then
Right.
create phone calls. Of course, that's not just illegal, but irresponsible. For us, when we look at it, obviously we're not even entertaining that kind of world of irresponsible. But for us, it's a little bit more in terms of, I mean, accuracy is one point. We create a lot of content at Big Leap for our clients, and so we've just seen enough of those hallucinations you hear about and just errors. I saw a guy who found a comparison of his software someone else had created, and it listed this comparison chart of this software versus that software, and every single point was wrong. It was like API access, yes. He's like, I don't have an API. So it can create a lot of things, and that doesn't always mean it's accurate. And so that's of course really important. But we also we're starting to see a lot of beginnings of legislation, things in Europe. California is beginning theirs. We've seen some in Utah as well, in terms of compliance as well as transparency. So telling maybe a reader on your website or a viewer of your video that this was created, or how much of it was created with AI. And so we try to help our clients stay ahead of that and make sure that they're in compliance. And I think we'll just see more of that, of course, as it's continuing to come more stream. And so our stance is always trying to be transparent, and that's regardless of legislation. But it just helps us prepare and help our clients prepare for that kind of stuff that comes down the road.
Well, compliance is one thing, and I understand that, I think, but responsibility also falls on the user sometimes. A trivial example: if you use uh, one of the LLMs for quotes from books or papers, it can often get them wrong, and in fact, it sometimes makes them up. And therefore, I feel as a user, it's my responsibility to double check that, which is kind of a burden that takes away some of the value. So, how do you deal with things like that about checking accuracy or reality in the content?
Yeah, so in a way, so we probably aren't the heaviest users of AI content. For us, we break down content into different types and has different amounts of usage essentially by type. So when we're trying to create something that is more thought provoking, deep, has quotes, has personal experiences, like you said, we've tried it using AI, but we find that because we want to be responsible with it, with the editorial process and checking everything, fact checking everything. Isn't always necessarily a huge time savings. We have found some content where we're creating more of a mass content. Essentially, we still need to do that. We still need that editing process. But if we're talking about an example, we've worked with a company that had, I think it was like 1,000 locations across the country. They just need a little bit of like local content for each location, and so we were able to create it first ourselves, and then provide enough instruction that we were able to replicate that across all those locations. Still reviewed each one by us as a human, but also the local manager. We had them review it too, because they know their location better than others. And we found higher accuracy in that situation, but not perfect still. So for us, it comes down to kind of what type of content are we trying to create. In some situations, we may be zero AI assistance there, and some might be a little heavier.
Yeah, and then it seems like one of the boundaries on the upper side is what you refer to as purely AI generated content, and maybe that's where the high risk is, that you don't want to be in that purely AI content. You need to have that human component, if
Yeah.
only to check or verify or shape it in some way.
I think so. Again, we live in that content creation world, and for a variety of reasons. One, just like you said, accuracy I think is very suspect when you're doing that at scale and not having any kind of human review. But also just from a marketing perspective, when something is that easy and replicable, if I can say that word
Mhm.
right, uh, what value does it actually provide to a user or an end customer or a search engine if that's your goal, or AI to show up in there? It becomes the sea of sameness, right? It's everybody can do it. What's unique or what stands out about that? What's authentic about that content? And so, while it might be this little hack right now, if you're better at it than others of creating a ton of content using AI, it might be short lived. It might be valuable, but short lived, I think, in terms of how effective or impactful that actually is at the end of the day.
Well, that gets us to the one of the cores of your business, which is creativity,
Mhm.
and that's an open question these days. Can the AI be creative? Can it come up with ideas that the humans are not going to come up with, or better ideas, or somehow more
Yeah,
creative?
I think it can. I don't think it's going to create something. Obviously it starts with prompts and things like that, and so you can ask for something, and there's lots of great ways to prompt and get better outcomes of what you're looking for. For us, I think one of the big changes we've been making, and where I think we've had more success in that realm, is when we've prepared it. I think AI struggles a little bit more with having some of the context and nuance that humans obviously have, and so we've changed a little bit about how we've operated to really understand the brand better. So having not just the tone of voice and the colors and the logos and stuff like that, but what's this brand's unique perspective on the industry or even the world? What's their conviction? What is truly unique and different about them than everyone else? And so when we've been able to provide that kind of context first, we find that the outcomes are going to be a lot better in terms of whether it's content or coming up with unique ideas. So in that situation, when we've done that with our clients and loaded it up, we're able to produce a content calendar that of just maybe topics as a starting point that's truly unique to them, and has that element of creativity because it's blending maybe a topic of like, hey, I want to talk about SEO, but it's coming from our lens, not just a generic prompt of, hey, I want to write an article about SEO, and 10 of us could do the same prompt and get the pretty similar outcome.
So that's really interesting. I grew up in the brand management business, so I love to hear you talk about brand uniqueness and brand essence and brand meaning.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you doing that as kind of the foundation. Can you feed that to the AI, and does it get it? Can it get to be a brand essence kind of absorber or expert?
It helps a significant amount. We're our own guinea pigs, so we do this for Big Leap, and so we went through. We've had elements of our brand, but we kind of went through a new process, a revised process, to not just dig into, okay, what's your maybe your core values or your elevator pitch, but kind of that some of that deeper rooted stuff that sometimes has to come from a founder about why did you get into this business, what do you love about this industry. We talk about brand aspirations, ideals, convictions, and when we bring all that to it brings a little bit of that soul into the content, which is often what's lacking when you talk about AI content, right? People are getting pretty good actually at deciphering what is or isn't written with AI content. It's not just M dashes, even like it's the feel. Like you lack the soul. I think that can be brought into content through that understanding of the brand.
Yeah. So can you build a brand avatar, not in the visual sense of a talking head, but the
Yeah.
repository of its essence that becomes kind of the mind and heart and soul of the brand.
Yeah, no, that's actually exactly what we do. We do have a brand character
Great.
that is a characterization of those three things I just mentioned, and so it helps for I think for AI, but even our team kind of take it in away from just one liners of what are these things into a person, a character, to something they can connect a little bit more with.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned this already, but I just wanted to probe. You talked about experimentation, running lots of experiments, continuous testing. Can you say a little bit about how you structure that? I mean, do you have a portfolio of experiments running at all times? Do you have a dashboard? How do you do that?
Yeah, so Big Leap, we have about 75 people or so, and so we have a lot of moving parts, a lot of different teams too. Of course, we have SEO and content and paid ads and revenue operations, and so trying to wrangle that in a good way is it's been a little bit of a challenge. But our head of product, James Stratman, recently launched at Big Leap what he calls Innovation Lab, and so we've created a little bit of a structure in our Slack somewhere where people are already kind of living
Mhm.
and how's kind of a format of, hey, here's the test that we ran, here's how we did it, here's the outcome, here's links if you want to replicate this on your team. So trying to break out of the team silos is always a challenge as you get a little bit bigger. And so this has been a great way to do it. In a good way, it's been so busy that channel that we use it on is sometimes hard to come back and find stuff. So
Mhm.
one of the innovations that one of the team members just came up with, I think this was yesterday and posted, was feeding all the past innovations into a custom GPT. And so if you can't remember one that was there 2 months ago, you can go talk to the custom GPT, and it's essentially indexed a lot of that information. So it's this meta AI
Yeah.
innovation process we've gone through, but it's been working really well for us. A great way for our team members. We've asked our team. We don't have one person. It's like, hey, you're the AI person. Go innovate or whatever, and then train everybody. We feel like when we talk about AI being assistive, it's something that's in the best interest of our team members. They need to learn to use it, how to use it, be curious, kind of go figure those things out for their own sake, for their long-term career success. And so we're trying a real kind of ground up approach. And then we've created that innovation lab to kind of house it and then distribute it across the rest of the company.
Yeah, that's great. One of our customers told me that he's been feeding recorded notes. He goes out on a walk and he records some ideas and then he uploads them into Notebook LM and he keeps them by month and can ask himself, "What did I say about this back in May?"
Yeah,
it, it remembers them. So
that's great.
that's a great aid. Um, I'm going to jump to another subject here because I'm fascinated by something you put on your website. So SEO. Bryan, I'm no expert in that, but I understand the concept. Is that dead? I mean, that used to be the whole direction of digital marketing,
Yeah.
right? You got to get your SEO right. Is that over now, or is it different in the world of AI?
Yeah, it's changing. That's where I got started. I've been doing it for 20 plus years, maybe 25, and I've heard SEO's dead since 2010, and so it's changes a lot. And this is probably the biggest change ever. So I don't mean to downplay that. And obviously that's a big part of our business, and so we're incentivized in that. Ultimately, kind of our view on it is their search behaviors are changing and will change, but we've actually seen search expanding more than contracting. So Google still last year saw more searches than they ever have before.
Mhm.
And then you're adding, ChatGPT and Perplexity, and it's a different way people are looking at it. And so it depends a lot on your audience. Obviously, younger males right now are the highest, utilization of AI. And so if that's your audience, and if you're kind of in a tech B2B world, like you need to be more focused on AI search, showing up in ChatGPT and AI overviews on Google than maybe traditional search. But again, Google still has 90% of the market share on search. And so people are quick to want to jump, I think, and follow a trend. And we're big advocates of being prepared, but we kind of joke around that we're like almost the anti-hype agency. There's a lot of hype around AI and a lot of great things about AI, but we've seen it across a lot of different ways. So ultimately, our clients, we've still been able to drive more traffic through Google search, but we're also helping them. How do I, show up in a chat GPT? Of course, if someone's researching, educational training, whether that was in Google or Reddit or a conversation at a conference, like you want your brand to be there. And so if search is changing from Google to different platforms, in theory, it's our clients still want to show up in all those places. So it's changing a little bit of how we do it and the approach. It's just a less of a focus on Google and more of a broader approach of how do I show up in all those places that our potential clients are talking about what we do.
Yeah, I kind of have the impression, and this might be wrong, so please correct me, but search for SEO terminology was an expression of need, we used to say, or someone's looking for something, we can derive a need from that. Today, it seems much like, to use your word, research. It's an expression of incomplete knowledge. So it's a bit more indirect in that sense, harder to derive the need from it. Is that right, or is that wrong?
No, I think you're spot on. And that's been probably the hardest change for people in the last year or two to really understand, because it's been a pretty traditional model of I rank for these keywords, I get click throughs for these and traffic to my website, and then I convert. Right, it's just your typical funnel. And like you said, it's more people are getting these data points from different places, and so we've shifted our approach. We call it brand-led performance marketing. So we're still ultimately trying to drive performance and revenue to our clients, but we're really focused a little bit more on the brand of, are you being represented and are you being seen in AI search results and Google search, on social and Reddit and Quora and all these places that people are getting all this information. And it ultimately, it's, the funnel isn't this linear thing anymore. It's, you're on this side of it, then you're on this side of it, then you're back to this side, and people bounce around a lot. And it's, in a way, it's actually just kind of going back to the roots of marketing, in a sense of how do we build a brand that our audience already recognizes before they get to Google to do a search for, a software company or whatever it may be.
So you gave me a trigger word there, Bryan, one of my pet peeves. So you said going back to the roots of marketing, which I'm a big fan of. And I feel that digital marketing, especially in its SEO variant, kind of ruined marketing, where it became mechanical. Even something like engagement is a number, it's a score, right? You dial it up. As opposed to what you said before, the essence of a brand, which is relationships, it's emotion, it's trust, it's all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So are we going back to that now? Is that what you think about?
I think so. And in a great way. I'm very excited about that. I mean, I was born and raised kind of in the performance marketing world, which I think is what you're describing a little bit of, like, okay, I can go spend X dollars on meta ads and I'm going to get Y in return. It was just this direct response marketing channel. And there's still opportunity. There's still a need for it, but it's become very competitive and more brands obviously doing it. Ad costs rise. So most companies are struggling, if that's your only strategy, to make any money doing that, to do it profitably. But what we see is that people that are developing a brand are able to drive, conversions directly or in combination with their performance marketing. That performance marketing performs better. They get clicks easier or cheaper than the competitors. Their close rates are faster. The price sensitivity is less. And so they have this advantage when they've built those relationships. You talked about the trust that they have with that audience. So I agree, and I'm honestly excited about that aspect of it. Let's go back and do it right. I think it's it's not all brand, it's not all performance. It's how do we build a brand specifically to our audience, really focused on them and where they are influenced, and then let's convert as people become in market over time.
Yeah, no, I love that. We're delighted to announce the Value Creators online course. For entrepreneurs in every kind of business, big, small, or medium, at every stage, in every industry, our course provides the foundations and principles on which to build success. Simple, clear purpose and principles give rise to creativity, innovation, and competitively superior business action. There are 11 foundational principles or mental models that together cohere into the value business model. Principles for value generation, principles for value operations, principles for value finance and accounting, and principles for value sustainability, as well as the new knowledge accumulation you'll need for continuous innovation. These principles are delivered by top business professors from top business schools: Mark Packard, Per Byland, Gordon Miller, David Rapp, and Bart Vanderhagen. You'll find video lessons from them, along with downloadable tools, processes, and other valuable content. Master these lessons, and you'll master the most important skill in business, value creation. Go to thevaluecreators.com and click the course link. I like that trend. So let me pick up on something else you said, because I hadn't thought about it in the way you expressed it. So you want the brand to know it's represented well and accurately and lovingly, as we say. We've got to love our brands. And you said in Quora discussions, in Reddit forums, and all over the internet. Can you monitor that? Can you dig that out?
Yeah, a lot of these groups. So I mentioned Quora and Reddit in particular because a lot of information that LLMs and Google are getting are from those sources, and so those are two in particular that are kind of are important to be represented in. And so yeah, we can monitor mentions of that. It going back to responsible and usage. And so there's people, anytime there's something like this that changes, there's people that want to game the system, and then there's the people that again want to build the long-term brand aspect. And so you'll see people on Reddit go in and create a fake profile, ask a question, who's the best HR software company, and then they answer their own question with a different account. It's that gimmicky stuff that eventually gets kind of worked out of the system. And so yeah, our focus is again that from that brand perspective, it's a long-term view. Not every brand understands that yet or has the stomach for it, but I think the ones that you see succeed in the long term will understand that, and they'll focus on the communities like Reddit and Quora and all the other ones out there as an element of how their brand's represented.
Do you actively try and build brand communities? Is that something that can be synthetic as opposed to naturally emerging?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not something I'd say we've done a ton. I have seen that done. I mean, maybe not for these purposes, but over the years, some great, software brands, for example, that build a community outside of their website. So if your audience is HR professionals, they'll use that example. They'll build kind of a hub of information, and they'll be able to curate in a good way, I think, those conversations, and create those opportunities for those conversations. And in the past, it's been used almost as a brand building method, and building those trusting relationships, like you said. But that it's just more of data, right? That's going to feed LLMs and their opinions, in a sense, of brands.
So let's flip it over to the client side. How are they feeling?
Yeah.
We've talked about how you employ AI brilliantly as an agency. Are the clients feeling, hey, this is a better age, or I'm finding results, or are they scared stiff?
It's all over the board. We work with some great, Fortune 500 type brands down to startups and small businesses. And so we see it in a lot of different ways. Some of the more of the startups, it's great again, because they are a little scrappier, and it's that now it gives me superpowers. And so they're able to create maybe something more on their own and just be more efficient in a sense. And again, we love that. We're trying to do that as much as we can internally too, of, how can we be the most efficient we can, while of course having all those checkpoints along the way. And then you have bigger companies that are maybe a little slower to move on it. They have different concerns around, data privacy and things like that, which of course make sense for them. And so there's nerves, definitely, I'd say across the board, that's a common thread of just some nerves of, not wanting to get left behind. Like, how do you do this the right way at the right speed, and, not get, lost in the dust.
Yeah. So we have a thesis on that, Bryan. I'd love your commentary on it, since you deal with both Fortune 500 brands and startups, that the startups have developed this idea, we call it venture mode, which is everything you talk about: intense experimentation, learning, speed, incredible focus on the customer to get customer value. And that big companies have to figure out how to be in venture mode. Even though they're bigger, they can't be slower, they can't be weighted down, they can't have too much administration and bureaucracy. Yeah. Are they sensing that, do you think, the big companies?
I think so, because I agree with that theory. But this AI change in the last couple of years has been interesting to see how the big companies react. So Google's a perfect example of that, right? Their whole business, for the most part, most of their revenue is built on an ad model on Google search. Mm-hmm. But if search behavior changes, and people are going to more of a prompt-based system, how does, obviously that could have a big impact on them. And so they've been moving faster than I think I've ever seen them move in the last while in terms of adapting. They've, of course, have AI overviews now. You've seen those in the search results. They have their AI mode. And so for them, obviously, you can imagine just that tricky balance of wanting to keep up with user and searcher behavior, but your whole business is based on ads. So how do you blend those two things together?
Right.
And so I wouldn't say they're leading necessarily in terms of advancement. I think you see that with the smaller companies. We're to say, OpenAI is small, but obviously they're newer and scrappier and less worried about an ad model right now. But yeah, Google's changed quickly, and again, there's good and bad that comes with that. They've left a lot of businesses in the dust that way. A lot of publishers in particular.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there's it's taking people's content. There's not a lot of reason for me to go to Wikipedia or any of these other ad-based type websites where that's where they make money to pay writers to create content. And so, I don't think they'll say it this way, but I think they've kind of had to make that choice of, to keep up, to stay relevant. We can't worry as much about the little guy. We've got to kind of look out for ourselves and the kind of the future of search and how it's changing.
Yeah. So, what kind of demands are clients making on Big Leap, Bryan? And tell us if that's changed. I mean, are they looking for fast growth that they can attribute to your AI aided creativity, or is it better brand imagery or perception of some kind that they can measure, or is it rate of innovation, or
Yeah.
what are they asking you for?
Yeah, I think there's an element of efficiency, and so they're saying, hey, we have clients we've worked with for 10 years, and so they said, hey, I paid you, we paid you X amount back then, we paid you X amount now. We would expect with AI, we should be more efficient, and so we've been able to do that in a lot of ways, be able to just do more for clients. Again, we want to do it the right way still, and so we're not just like we've said, kind of just pumping out AI content, but are there other ways we can be more efficient as an agency? And so there's that like kind of internal AI usage aspect. But from a marketing perspective to our clients, that everybody wants to stay, the cutting edge. And again, going back to kind of the hype thing, if you're on LinkedIn or these platforms, if you didn't know any better, you'd think no one goes to Google anymore. But again, there's still 90% of searches happening there.
Right.
And so it's probably been us trying to be a guide and kind of balance that aspect of, hey, what's driving business and revenue now, and where's the future going, and how do we find a good balance of taking care of business now that's important to you, but also setting you up for success long term. And so some of our best clients, that's how they're viewing it, is, and the good part is there really is a lot of overlap in a sense between, if you want to show up in Google search and AI, it comes down to kind of three core concepts. You're technically, your website's got to be easy to crawl and index, all that kind of stuff, pretty basic. Content, of course, is super important. And then the brand authority side. Those three help you rank in Google. Those three help you show up in ChatGPT. There's some nuance and unique things to those that we help clients with. But it's not two totally different worlds anymore. There's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, good point. And they, as you say, they do integrate over time. But so we officially hate efficiency here, Bryan. That's a term that economists have introduced that is, detrimental to growth and expansion and creativity and all of those good things, in the sense that you want to be effective, not efficient.
Yeah.
And one example is running lots of experiments. That's not very efficient, right? They overlap. Some succeed, some don't. And I would have thought that this new AI world will kind of take people away from efficiency as a kind of accounting concept, lower cost, into a world of effectiveness. How can I grow faster? How can I do more? So pause that a little bit for me. What's efficiency today?
Yeah, it's one example that comes to mind with that, and I kind of mentioned this in terms of just mass content creation. People look at that as that's efficient, but is it effective, right? And so, do we want to be efficient or effective, to your point? So take cold outreach email, like how many of those do you get a day, and how many do you actually pay any attention to, right? That's been going on for a long time, but it's like on steroids right now, because how easy is it to create really customized, unique emails? Like, I miss real emails now because I think they're, I don't even open them because I think they're spam sometimes. And so I think smart brands will try to not buy into the hype of, efficiency, and we can automate everything, but we can come back to that human creativity aspect,
Right.
and kind of forget all that stuff for a minute and say, how do I connect ultimately with this ideal client that I want to work with. And it goes back to the old like email versus real mail type of thing, right? We used to be excited to get an email, and now it's the other way around. It's like I actually got something in the mail that was interesting.
Yes.
So I think you'll see just more and more of that. And I think we're even seeing a return to offline marketing and in-person type events. I've seen that a lot locally, where people crave that, and it's real. Right? We're looking at each other face to face, having a conversation.
Yeah.
It's not an email that I don't know if they wrote that or if it was totally automated or whatever.
So that could be called experience marketing, right? We're having an experience if we go to an event and you and I have an experience talking to each other. Can AI do experience? Can it understand experience? Can it make
Good question.
experiences better? How does it do in that field?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've thought about that too much. I think so. And I think just generally long term, not just digital marketing or experience marketing. I think in my mind, it's AI hopefully is a feature, not a replacement, right? So I think you'll see that at events, if you're in a booth, things like that. I'm sure there'll be ways where AI, makes its way in there and just makes things, again, hopefully better. And all these examples makes us be able to do more and be better. And so, yeah, I think it reminds me with like when mobile was really coming about and everything was branded, and even digital, frankly, for that perspective. People talk like, oh, it's like, oh, we need mobile advertising and mobile SEO and even digital marketing. And it's like, for a while, that's the new thing, but eventually that becomes the norm. And so I think maybe that's the direction AI goes. Right now, everything's labeled AI, but long term, it's just part of everything
Yeah.
that exists and that we do. And it's not really a call out or a differentiator anymore.
Yeah, it becomes a commodity of some kind,
Yeah.
or platform anyway. But you've dealt with speed of change, and just picking up on some of your points there. Last week, Grok 4 was released, and Elon said that it's PhD level reasoning for academic problem solving. It hasn't, he said, produced any new technology yet, but it will, and maybe even new physics. So, putting that under the umbrella of speed of change, in all of your time watching this in the last couple of years, are we moving faster? Is the speed of change faster, or is it pretty much a standard kind of, it's
Yeah.
always changing rate?
It is always changing. I guess I have to say it feels like that speed is increasing in a lot of ways, and hopefully that turns out to be the greatest, part of AI, the invention of AI, right? Is medical breakthroughs and transformations that maybe humans couldn't get to fast enough. I hope that's the case with that. But I mean, when you go back and look, and to give a credit to Rand Fishkin, he has a great post from a company called Spark Toro, where he talks about the topic of people are like, oh, what's the future, right? Or are there going to be any jobs left for humans? And he goes back and pulls some great research from when machinery came about to farming, and then when personal computing, of course, like in the 80s and 90s, became more mainstream. And yeah, there were jobs that definitely became obsolete, right? There's not a lot of switchboard operators out there anymore, but the amount of jobs that those things created, new jobs that never existed before, is just X amount more than the jobs that it killed off. And so I think there will be an element of that with AI. Obviously, no one can see the future, and AI is different than those things in terms of what it can do. But I hope, I guess that's my view in terms of saying, hey, we want to create the world you want to live in. I hope AI can. That's what AI can be, is enable humans to do more, be better, create better things. And it starts to feel like those doomsday scenarios, like if you get too dark with it in terms of not having jobs and things like that. So I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, in fact, I also read somebody saying the other day, we shouldn't talk like that because the AI will listen and won't get ideas.
That's
let's,
right. We can't.
let's talk positively. I agree with
That's
that.
funny.
So I'm with you. I'm optimistic about the future, but one of the places you get pessimistic as an operator is, how do you keep up? This pace of change is so
Yeah.
incredible, and people talk about Grok 4, that Elon's gone from nowhere to the leader in 24 months. So that just highlights the speed of change. So just thinking, you've been running this company for a long time, and you're keeping up. how do you create that culture? How do you know when you're keeping up? How do you feel about, I've got to go faster? Tell us about this keeping up.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think I think in a way that's been a negative aspect of it from almost like a mental health perspective. I think there's a lot of people that just constantly feel overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And some of that is as much, I mean, I live in the digital marketing world. I'm not a huge fan of social media for a lot of reasons. And this is kind of one of them of just, what people put out there, and it's media brands, it's influencers, but it's, clicks, right? That's what they're trying to drive. And even some of the people that run these companies, Elon or Sam, whatever, Altman,
Mhm.
they and Perplexity, they all kind of talk about this future where, yeah, we're going to cut 50% of jobs. And I think, man, I don't know if they believe that or not, but I also think it is like creating this fear cycle a little bit, right? Of like, oh, if that's the case, I need to use Perplexity more now, right? Because I need to
Right.
stay up to date. And so I think that aspect of it's been bad in terms of what I worry about. I think there's an element of that, of, how this impacts, humans and people from a mental health perspective. Um, I wonder a little bit more specifically talking about that jobs aspect of how it affects just the younger generation and kids coming out of college. So when we talk about AI giving us superpowers or automating the basic stuff, that's often where we all started, right? That's how we learned and kind of got our foot in the door. So if you're a developer, for example, what need is there maybe for the intern or the junior developer? If you can, as an experienced developer, use AI as kind of your sidekick to do a lot of that stuff. So I think it'll change how people come into the job market in a sense. I think that it's going to be the onus on them a little bit more to learn on their own and learn these tools and then show they can do that at almost like a senior level before they can even get their foot in the door of a job. And so some I think will do that well, but I worry a little bit about what that looks like for different people. And then the last thing I think I worry about a little bit is just, again, a little bit more of the doomsday type stuff, but these tools are all created by people. And so you've talked about bias in these tools. You have, and no political statements on any of this, but you have Elon, you have Google, you have all these people at the end of the day are people, not just companies. And you've just seen it. And, all these LLMs are trained on the content that's been created, which has human bias in it. And so how do we, prevent, a small group of people from really controlling the world's information? And frankly, that's been a problem, I think, for a while with Google. They've kind of owned the information world for a long time.
Yeah, I think one of the positives is the idea of relationships. So I think it applies in your business. You're an exemplar of it with Big Leap, but I think generally also in the marketing agency world, we think of relationships, we think of trust, we think of reliability and those kinds of things. And while this world of AI swirls around us, we can maintain that as a stable foundation. We're in this together. We're working to help each other. We're both facing the same challenges. And so you shift the idea from the mechanics to the relationships. I think that's one of the things that marketing has a lot to contribute as a discipline because it's built on relationships.
Yeah, it's again kind of a funny like full circle thing, but yeah, I think it comes back to those like human conversations. Like I could go if I'm looking for I love golf. If I was looking for some new golf product, I could go do the research. AI can tell me, I've scanned these thousands of websites. Here's the outcome. And I've done this recently, and really, it's like sometimes I want to talk to. I have a friend that's a great golfer. He knows me well. He kind of knows, anyway, knows more about me. It's like I almost trust his recommendations still better than what AI kind of gives you the average of everything, right? And so sometimes it's almost too much, right? And so having those direct, trusting relationships like you described, I think, become more and more valuable.
Yeah. Well, I love what you've been saying about the return of brand as old people like me understand it, the emotional, relationship-based, trust-based kind of essence of brand. And just to get back to the starting point, it would seem to me that with your core principles that you've expressed, you're creating a brand of the AI enabled, shall we say, or AI capable agency that people can trust and rely on because we've thought about it. Are you getting that kind of feedback?
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think, that whole brand side, you've heard Seth Godin talk about tribes and stuff like that. Like your brand is aligning with people who have a similar belief as you, and in a lot of ways, there's some parallels there. And so, that's ultimately who's a good fit for us and who we're a good fit for are people that have the same vision in terms of marketing and what that is. And I think that's maybe a good thing that we'll see with AI and how people find, products and how products are found, is it does help, brands, like take an e-commerce or clothing brand that kind of has a unique perspective on the world and how they do things. If an LLM, knows me and what I value, it might help me find those brands faster than I might otherwise. And so trying to align as a business, trying to align with customers that feel the same way, I hope that actually improves that process. That might make it a little harder to compete for the broad world, but I don't think that's the smartest marketing strategy usually, right? Is try to, you market to everybody, you market to no one kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of maybe a brand, I guess, that we're trying to create. Not that it was intentional, but I think that is obviously our stance on the world, and we work best with, people that view that. If someone comes to us and says, hey, this shouldn't cost, that much, it should cost $1,000 because AI can do it all. Like, that's just not our approach, what we think's best. And we're probably not a good fit for people in that situation.
Well, I love what you're doing to reassert marketing, Bryan. That's one of our beliefs here, that marketing is the most important function of a business because it's focused on the customers, trying to understand customer needs. It tries to bring that information inside so we can respond with commercial activity, whether it's innovation or marketing or advertising, whatever it might be, and to do that on a human understanding basis as opposed to a technology basis, or maybe combining the two, but certainly humans first, as you say. I think that's really important. So I hope you're getting that positive response from your business world.
Yeah, it's a change. Again, people have been over-indexed on performance marketing for a while, I think, in a sense. And so we hope quickly people are coming back around to this understanding. And it's not that we're wrong the last 10 years. It's just you go through these phases, and hopefully we're kind of pulling the best out of each of those, because performance still has its place, Google ads, meta ads, everything. But again, just like we've talked about, how do we start maybe at that brand level, build those relationships? And we're using Meta and Google or whatever as tools to ultimately drive those conversions and things like that. But it's not performance marketing alone isn't a go-to market strategy. You really have to have all those other pieces in place.
Good. Well, I find this exciting and inspiring. So I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. And as you say, it's getting better results in the marketplace. People should be optimistic about that. I agree.
I think so. That's awesome.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, Bryan, we'll link to bigleap.com. Is there any other connections you'd like to make with the audience? Or can we find you on LinkedIn? What do you prefer?
LinkedIn. If you find me on there, I started a newsletter just a few weeks ago, and I try to keep it short and sweet. And just really, the newsletter I created is targeted towards people marketing adjacent, I guess, that maybe founders, CEOs, private equity. We've seen a lot of private equity guys following along, and it hopefully keep you up to speed on all these changes that are going quickly. Have really focused on what's important. Just kind of some of those highlights of the stuff that matters most.
Good. Is that on Substack or on your website?
It's on my LinkedIn profile. So Bryan, LinkedIn/n/Bryan Phelps. And then you can subscribe to the newsletter right there.
Great. We will do that, and we'll put it out there for everybody else to subscribe. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Good. It's great to meet you, and we'll follow your progress with great interest and your newsletter.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bryan.
This has been another episode of the Value Creators Podcast. Thanks for listening. You can visit thevaluecreators.com for links and resources related to this episode. And check hunterhastings.com for more content on entrepreneurial business management based on value creation principles.